and a very warm welcome to this edition of the Blether with me, Gary.
And me, William, and we're very close to the birthday, of course, this week of Scotland's national poet, Robert Burns, who gave the world so many great works that we all know throughout the world. And that, of course, is on the 25th of January.
Absolutely. So we thought, what better way to celebrate than to look at Burns's relationship with music and dance?
And to enlighten us all, we are joined by a man who is well known to dancers, a maestro on the fiddle, and a very good friend to the RSCDS, the one and only Mr. Pete Clark, isn't it, Gary?
Yes, absolutely. Welcome, Pete, and a happy new year to you.
Thank you
Oh,
very much.
yes, and a happy new year to
And to
everyone,
all our
all our
viewers and
members, dancers,
listeners.
musicians, the lot.
Happy
Cheers.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Long may your Limerick.
Aye, with other folks, Coull.
I think we'll need to subtitle that one,
I
William.
think we'll need to explain that someday, but no the night. No.
No, absolutely. Well, Pete, it's brilliant to have you on the Blether with us. You are, as William said, a maestro in the fiddle. So do you want to let us know just when did you start playing the fiddle?
When I started playing fiddle, 9 years old, in Dunfermline, where I grew up, and I had lessons from a chap called Harry Grant, who lived in Salon in Fife, and he used to come to the school after the school day finished and teach people how to play the fiddle. And one day a note came around the class saying that Mr. Grant had spaces if anyone would like to learn. And I don't know why, but I liked the sound of the violin, and I went home and asked my mum and dad if I could get lessons. And they said, yeah. So that's when I started, aged 9.
I used to, it's amazing that you could go and ask to learn the fiddle. I remember when I was, you were a music teacher in Dumfries and Galloway as well.
No, I was a biology teacher in Dumfries and Galloway.
Did you not teach a fiddle down here?
No.
Oh, it was biology you taught, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like playing the fiddle, but also loved fish, which I still do, both. And when it came career choice time, I fancied becoming Jacques Cousteau or something similar. So I studied marine biology and ended up teaching biology, but keeping fiddle on the side,
Yeah, I remember that. You were away down the Newton Stewart kind of area down the
That's
Galloway.
right, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember, no, I was going to say about the fiddle. I remember being in Moffat when I was teaching, used to send children home with instruments, and then we'd meet their parents in the shop the next week and they would say, "Are you responsible for sending my child home with a violin?" Great fun, great
Yeah,
fun.
I was desperate. I was desperate to learn the fiddle.
What are
when I was
you?
younger. Yeah, and eventually managed to get fiddle lessons and started dancing at the same time. So, of course, as you will, I'm sure, attest to, Pete, you need to practice a lot to be able to play the fiddle well. Well, I was dancing most of the time. So eventually my fiddle teacher said to me, Gary, I think you should stick to the dancing. Which
But
is
of course,
brilliant enough.
but of course, you've managed to do both because you've managed to dance and, of course, you're endlessly on the fiddle as well, Gary. We all know that. So,
Yeah.
what can you do? Anyway, Pete, it's Robert Burns' birthday, 25th of January. What an amazing guy. What wonderful works he's given to the world and, the best laid schemes of mice and men, all that sort of stuff. So I thought we'll start off with a wee poem today. And we're going to invite Mr. Gary Coull to recite something for us. Have you got a wee summing up your sleeve, Gary, or for our
Well, so once or twice I've done the address to the haggis.
listeners?
So I could maybe do it. So of course, viewers will need to imagine that there's a great steaming haggis in front of me.
Steady before you go any further. Okay, good.
But it's a great one to kickstart a burn supper, of course. And one that you can, as somebody that used to do amateur dramatics, get really into. So here we go. Address to the haggis. Fair fire, honest, sonsy face, great chieftain of the puddin' race, aboon am I ye tak your place, painch, tripe, or thairm. Weel ye word ye wa grace, as lang's my airm. The groaning trencher there ye fill, your hardies like a distant hill. Your pin would help to mend a mill in time of need. While through your pores your dews distill, like amber bead. His knife, sae rustic labour dicht, and catch ye up wi' ready slecht, trenching your gushing entrails brecht like on a ditch. Then, oh, what a glorious sight, warm reeking, rich. Then horn for horn they stretch and strive, till tack the hindmost on they drive, till a' their wheels swelled outs belive are bent like drums. Then Aldgin man mayst like to rive. Be thanked, hums. Is there for our his French ragout, or olio that would stow a sou, or fricassee that would mak our spew wi' perfect scunner? Looks down wi' sneer, scorn for view, on sic a dinner. Peer devil, see him ower his trash, as feckless as a withered rash, his spindle shank a good whiplash, his neve a knit, through bloody field or field to dash. Oh, how unfit! But mark, the rustic haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread, clapping his wally neve a blade, he'll mak it whistle, and legs, and arms, and heads will sned, like taps a thistle. Ye powers wha mak mankind their care, and dish them out their bill of fare. Auld Scotland once nae skinking where the joups and luggies, but if ye wish her grateful prayer, gie her a haggis.
Hey, well done, that man. Thank you for that. Cheers. Making me hungry already. And for the sake of our friends in other parts of the world who wouldn't have understood a single word of that, basically Robert Burns was using the haggis, which is made up of the leftovers, all put into a sheep's stomach and boiled beautifully, and he was holding it up with the big fancy dishes of the world, saying, "This is the best wholesome food that you can get." So that was it. And to write a poem like that, just amazing. Anyway, one of the times we've spoken about this before, Pete, that I would love to have been a fly on the wall is when Robert Burns met the great Neil Gow, the fiddler, who most of our dancers will know the name Neil Gow. Pete, tell us all about that. It must have been amazing.
Well, I wasn't actually there, but yeah, it must have been an incredible meeting. It happened in 1787. Burns, the following year, I think, the year following publication of his Kilmarnock edition, he suddenly found himself wealthier than he'd probably ever been because of the success of his book. And so he decided to do a tour of Scotland and visit so many places he'd heard of but never been to. And he also wanted to visit some people, one of those people being Neil Gow. Burns wrote poems, but he wrote songs, and he quite often used traditional melodies for his songs, and some of those melodies were composed by Neil Gow. So in, I think it was August 1787, Burns arrived in Dunkeld and first encountered Neil in a house which belonged to a chap called Dr. Stewart. It's the old rectory house. If you're ever in Dunkeld and walk down past the cross and towards the cathedral, the very last house on the right-hand side is the old chapter house where Neil Gow met Burns. They must have shared songs and verses in there, and then Neil Gow must have invited Burns to visit his home, which was across the river in the village of Inver, just where the wee River Bran flows into the Tay. So after their meeting in the old rectory, sorry, I said chapter rectory. After that meeting, they went across to Neil Gow's house and continued their conversation and anecdotes and tunes and blethers. It must have been phenomenal. I'll just pause for a second. I'll be back in 1 second.
No doubt they would have a glass of claret as well, because although people think whiskey, Burns and all the rest of it, actually Burns and that at that time a lot of claret would have been getting drunk, red wine.
Claret, and they also a popular drink at the time was a thing called shrub, which was an alcoholic beverage infused with various herbs. So they probably had a glass of shrub, you know. They might even have gone down the hill from Neil Gow's cottage to the inn in Inver, because Neil Gow's cottage is situated right behind the building that used to be the inn. It's an inn no longer. But what I was going to say was when Burns and Gow were chatting and exchanging verses and tunes, it's very possible that this actual fiddle
was
at that meeting. This
That's
is
that's Neil Gow's fiddle, is it?
this is one of Neil Gow's fiddles. Fiddlers have more than one fiddle, you know,
course.
just as guitarists have hundreds of guitars. But this particular instrument, it was in Neil Gow's possession at the end of his life, and the provenance says that it was his favourite fiddle towards the end of his life, and he bequeathed it to one of his friends. So it's a very old instrument, and Neil Gow and Burns met in 1787. Burns was just a young lad of 30 or so, and Neil Gow was 1787. What was he? 60. He was twice Burns' age when they met. This fiddle may well have been in the room, you know, and chances are Neil Gow would have played a few tunes to Robbie, and Robbie would have perhaps had a shot and played this.
Could you give us an example of a tune that might have been played that night?
I will.
Could you? That would be great.
How amazing is this? That we've got Neil Gow's fiddle.
So one of the tunes which Burns used for a song was a lovely tune which was composed by Neil Gow for his friend James Murray of Abercairny. Abercairny was a big house near Crieff, and Burns loved this tune and used it for a song called Where Braving Angry Winter's Storms. And so on.
Fantastic.
So that's one of the several melodies that Burns used for his verses.
So when you think about it, Pete, though, that meeting, you know, so Burns was the wee guy really wanting to meet the great Neil Gow at that time.
Yeah.
It's such a quirk of history, isn't it? And what came out of that meeting of minds is just unbelievable. You know, and Gary, if you'd stuck in at the fiddle, you could have been like William Gregg, Robert Burns' dance teacher. You could have played the fiddle and danced at the same. I know you're not very good at multitasking, but you know you could have managed it.
You're going to say I'm not very good at dancing, which is probably right enough as well. But you're right. In the William Gregg fiddle is quite an interesting story, I think, because it's I was watching a documentary actually about Gary Innes's Hoolie at the Hydro, and the big event that Gary Innes from Take the Floor and Your Requests on Radio Scotland's been organising big concert, a traditional music concert in the Hydro in Glasgow. And William Gregg's fiddle was played during the Hoolie at the Hydro this year. So, but the story behind it, Pete, I think is around Burns going along to learn to dance, and Gregg was the fiddler and the dance teacher. Is that right?
I think he was a dance master, yeah, and of course they used to hold gatherings at the Bachelors' Club in Tarboughton, as they say down there.
Tarboughton, that's
Tarboughton, aye. I was corrected when I was down there a couple of years ago.
For our friends, that's Tarbolton. It's
Tarboughton, yeah, but
Tarbolton,
for Ayrshire folk, it's Tarboughton. And the chap who usually plays that fiddle, the Gregg fiddle, it belongs to the National Trust, but it's usually played for them by a friend of mine, Alistair McCulloch, who lives in Ayr. And Alistair, every year, most years, he plays for the Burns Club at Ayr in Burns Cottage, and he plays on that fiddle when he gets permission to take it out. It usually comes out with a bodyguard. It's got to come out with its own personal carer. You know, they're very, very cagey about it. But a couple of years ago,
excuse me.
William's got his own personal carer.
Say nothing, Mr. Coull. Thank you very much. This is all to do with folk being younger, half your age, or let's not even go there. Right.
But a couple of years ago,
yeah.
A couple of years ago, Alistair had to take the Gregg fiddle to the USA to play at a Burns event over there. So he I got his gig for that night. So I think it was 2, 3 years ago. I was down there on Burns night in Burns Cottage in Ayr playing Neil Gow's fiddle. So that was quite a feeling,
Quite
on
something.
Burns' birthday.
Yeah. I was going to say, so Burns, he's well known in his writings because actually, Burns' poems and songs are terrific, but if you read his letters, they're really quite remarkable. It tells you so much more about him. And he talks about going to the dancing at Turbolton, at Tuboughton, to the Bachelors Club. And I suppose that was like going to a nightclub these days because that's where people met each other. That's where the girls were. And Burns went there to dance, meet the girls, and William Gregg taught them to dance, Scottish dancing, Scottish country dancing, playing the fiddle at the same time. But he says in his letters that his father, being a very strict Presbyterian and so on at that time, in Scotland, of course, we must remember that time, was not at all in favour of this and tried to stop Burns from going to the dancing. He did not want him to dance. And Burns said, as a 17-year-old, whatever age he was, he went to the dancing. And actually, he and his father never really made up after he defied his father by going to the dancing. He said his father held that against him for the rest of his life. Isn't that amazing when you think about it these days?
It's amazing. It's not surprising, probably, but it's amazing. Um, the other thing that's happening in a couple of months' time, something Alistair McCulloch and I have done before, is we're doing a concert featuring both fiddles, this Neil Gow fiddle and the Gregg fiddle. And when we collaborate like that, we call it the Twa Fiddles, the two fiddles, the two violins, the Twa Fiddles event. And we're doing that again in March. The last time we did it was a few years ago in the Scottish Parliament. And that was an event sponsored by John Swinney, and it was to raise the profile of, at the time, our campaign to raise money to put up a memorial for Neil Gow in Dunkeld, which we've since achieved, So yeah, the Twa Fiddles will be fiddling again in March.
So Pete, the idea of an itinerant dancing teacher and fiddle player, can you explain what they did, these guys? Itinerant means, Gary, they went round about, okay?
Yeah. Once upon a time, I knew a lovely lady who lived up in Strathgarry near Killiecrankie. She's gone now, but she talks of her school days in the very early 1900s and how a chap called Dan C. Reid would come around, and he was a dance master, and he had a wee, what they call a kit fiddle, a very small, very transportable fiddle, and he'd play and teach them dancing, and that used to be quite, well, relatively commonplace, I think, in Scotland in the 1800s and perhaps 1700s. So that was how dancing was taught. And I dare say quite a few fiddle players would have added this to their portfolio of things they could do, They could play for classes, they could play for balls and stately events and so on. They could write tunes for folk, they could teach folk how to play the fiddle, they could... in the case of Nathaniel, one of Gow's sons, they went into publishing. So there were a multitude of different things which would add up to make some sort of sustainable income.
Quite incredible that they went around the villages and people probably put them up, fed them, and then they would move on to another village, and word would get round they were coming, the dancing teachers coming, and the fiddle, and incredible, absolutely incredible.
Well, and for those that have read their manual, which we've actually established during these episodes of the Blether, Pete, that William's not one of those people. But in the history bit of the manual, there is a bit about dancing masters.
There you are. There you
So
are.
I'm just shining my halo here to show that I've read it down.
But you see, I was aware of all that before the manual appeared, as Pete would have
That's
been.
because you were there at the time.
Oh dear, it's a wonder this happens at all, Pete. This is episode 10, by the way. It's amazing we got by episode 2, but we're getting there. Anyway, Pete, the Gow family, Nathaniel, Neil, all that lot, and Burns, the tunes. Obviously, our dancers dance to original tunes by some of these guys. And I'm thinking of, for example, Cornrigs would be one that folks would know, which is, of course, a Burns song, Cornrigs. Could you give us a wee belt of Cornrigs?
and so on, you know.
I love She's But a Lassie. All Burn songs, but used for our dances as well. Some original tunes. What about the Gows and original tunes for dances, Pete?
Oh, the Gows. Neil Gow, he's famous because he wrote some beautiful slow airs, like the one I played earlier. But most of these fiddle players' compositions would have been for dancing, so they'd have been reels, or jigs, or strathspeys, you know. And then the Gows were prolific. Neil himself is supposed to have written somewhere in the order of 80 tunes, but he had 4 sons. And one of those, Nathaniel, he composed probably over 200. And it was Nathaniel who also went into the publishing business, which enabled so many of these tunes to survive, which otherwise they may have just gone by the by, you know. And one of the other contemporaries of them was Robert McIntosh, who lived just north of Dunkeld in a wee place called Tullymet. At least that's where he grew up. But then McIntosh, at the age of 25, moved to Edinburgh, at which point Neil said to his son Nathaniel, who was already in Edinburgh, you watch out for Robert and look after him and help him out, blah, blah, blah. So there was a network going on, and they were all busy writing tunes and playing for dancing. But the Gows wrote some lovely jigs. I'll play a few. I'll not play for more than 15 minutes, okay?
Okay, that's wow, fantastic, Pete. Absolutely great. Listen, can you tell us the name of those tunes? Because if you don't,
Yeah, the
we'll
first
get
one.
letters. We'll get letters. You didn't tell us the name of the tunes.
I better do that.
Tell us-
The
you better
first
do.
one is called The Sailor's Wife by Neil Gow, and it's the original for the Leith Country Dance. And then the second tune was Miss Sally Hunter of Thurston by Nathaniel Gow. And the third tune was allegedly also by Nathaniel Gow, called Miss Margaret Brown, or as we say in the trade, Maggie Brown. But yeah, all really popular Gow tunes. You know, it's amazing today. You know, you still go to a music session and you hear tunes written 250, 300 years ago.
And I think it's important for our dancers to know that when they dance some of the older dances, that and the original tunes and tunes are way, way back before before the dances, way back in the 1700s. Or remembering it too, of course, it was the oral tradition at that time. I mean, we'll talk about Auld Lang Syne later on. Burns said he took it down from an old man singing, never claimed it as his own, but he improved it. So it was the same with music. Things would be handed from one fiddler to the next. An amazing time, that mid to late 1700s. Fantastic.
Age of
And that
Enlightenment, wasn't it?
And dances would have been the same, of course, because, they weren't published in the same way they are now. So it would have been kind of watching them and then taking it, trying to remember it when you get home and do it once you get there, and then maybe, write it down if you could. But
Hence the reason that until probably the RSCDS, came along and standardized things, which meant we can now dance throughout the world, which is terrific. But even in Scotland, up until then, certain dances would be danced differently in different parts of the country. You would have danced things differently up in Aberdeenshire, Gary, from what we would have danced things. Same name, same basic dance, but it would have been done slightly differently. Better down here, I have to say. But,
I think one thing which definitely changes if you move about the country and look at dancing and participate is the speed at which they dance, you know?
well, I was going to say that, Pete, because that speed that you played it there, actually, for our dancers listening who maybe, have just come into dancing, that speed would have been very close to what dancers would have danced to in the old days, so way back then.
Quite brisk, I think.
Absolutely, very brisk.
And the West Highland style is always brisk, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
If you ever jump up and do a Scottish
Great,
there,
great stuff.
it's a workout.
So, William, you mentioned that it's much better down there. But of course, you're in the heart of Burns country, aren't
Pretty
you?
much, pretty much. Yeah, in
Down
fact, he's
in the
in his
Freesia.
grave just about 3 miles from where I live, and I look across the valley here to Ellisland Farm, where he came to from. When he had the sense to move from Ayrshire to Dumfriesshire.
And
So
you're able to frequent the same pub that he
the Globe Inn and all. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have been ill up that close many times, just as Robert Burns would have been 200 years before me. But
I'm
the
sure you've
next,
done
huh?
I'm sure you've done a song or two up that close or in the pub as well.
I wonder what you're going to say there.
You
But
fancy,
yeah.
I'm just going to interject here, and
Good.
we've had a recitation of a poem, and we've had some music that's connected to Burns, and obviously he was a very prolific songwriter.
Mhm.
Maybe we could get a song.
I thought you were never going to ask, Gary.
I never thought I would ask. The
But
viewers never
no, I mean,
thought.
unbelievable. I mean, one thing I loved so much was people will remember the homecoming year, and of course the dance. And I think George Meikle wrote the original tune for that, which was very, very popular. That was all to do with Burns, the bicentenary of Robert Burns' death in Dumfries, when he virtually got a state funeral here. It was pretty much because he was a member of the volunteers and so on. And well, if I turn my head to the side slightly and take my glasses off, even yet, I could resemble Burns, and I had quite a few jobs here in that year being a lookalike. And one was to reenact him being given the freedom of Dumfries when he came back from his Highland tour. The council, and it was all done at the mid steeple, and he put the Burgess ticket in the band of his hat. So we reenacted that. I had to learn to ride to do that. I had to come up in a big white pony thing up the high street, but so that was all right. And one of the great things was appearing on the children's television program Blue Peter, of course, as Robert Burns. It was great to do that, and put Dumfries and Galloway on the map a bit. But to get back to the music and the dance, we've often talked about the fact that Scotland's got such a living tradition, that none of this is just stuck in the 1700s, that people are still writing tunes, still writing dances. So a number of years ago, when I conducted a community choir in Moffat, there was a lady came to live in Moffat called Caroline Sperry, who was principal viola player with the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra. And Caroline got very much involved with the local scene, playing for the choir, playing for the local theatre group. And we commissioned her on that year to write some four-part arrangements for Willie Wassell Dwelt on Tweed, which is local to Moffat, and Craigie Burnwood, which is a beautiful, beautiful song. So she wrote new tunes for that for my choir. And then as a thank you, she penned this lovely wee melody for My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose, as a thank you to me for asking her to do that. So I thought I'd let you hear this just now. And I don't know if you agree or not, Pete, the best Scottish tunes and the best Scottish arrangements of tunes are the simplest things. Even Jimmy Shand used to tell kids learning music, keep it simple, son, keep it simple. And this little melody, you all know the tune for My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose. Here's Caroline's one. See how you think it stands up. I think it does a great job. Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, sae deep in love am I. And I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt wi' the sun. And I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands o' life shall run. And fare thee weel, my bonny lass, and fare thee weel a while. And I will come again, my love, though 'twere 10,000 miles. There we are. And it's got a beautiful, very, very plain, ordinary piano accompaniment. Pete, what do you think of that? I think that stands up really well with the other tune.
It's nice. A nice melody. Very simple, as you say.
Very simple. Yeah.
I say the same myself about music when you're listening to Scott Skinner, more recent than Gout. He died only in 1927, but he wrote some incredibly tricky pieces. But the tunes he wrote which really stand out are some of the simplest he composed, Simplicity is always best, I think.
Yeah. Have you got something you can play for us, Pete, to indicate that?
Yeah, one of Skinner's most haunting melodies is a tune called Hector the Hero. It's very simple, isn't it? You don't need to be playing 500 notes a second to impress people.
Yeah, I think
Somebody
you're
that
absolutely right. And that's sorry, Gary, that's the sort of essence of, we come back to the essence of the Scot, because we often get asked by our members when they come to summer school or whatever from overseas, we really enjoy the music, but sometimes they sit down and you can see them, what is it about Scotland and its music and its dancing? And one of the words you could say is it's simplistic. It's simple. It's straightforward, and that comes from the Scottish character itself. I think we're a very straightforward kind of simple. Would you agree? Am I barking up the wrong tree here, Pete?
I would say you're simple, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but a simple folk.
I walked into that. I just
walked
walked
right into
into
it,
that
yeah.
big time.
Yeah.
No, you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Aye. On the subject of Dumfries, since it came up at the end of the meeting in Inver, when Robert Burns was saying cheerio to Neil Gow, he must have said, "Look, Neil, if ever you're in Dumfries, you must visit me because I've really enjoyed today, And if you look in this particular edition, it's the James Bark edition of Burns, published in 1955, first published in 1955. There's a poem called To Mr. Gow Visiting Dumfries. Yeah. And the reason I tracked that poem down was on Neil Gow's cottage today, there's a plaque which basically says Neil Gow lived there. And on that plaque is a verse which says, "Nae fabled wizard's wand I trow, had e'er the magic ere to go, and wi' a wave he draws his bow across his wondrous fiddle." And then it says Robert Burns, and I thought, where's that come from? And eventually I found it. It's only in that James Bark edition, and it's called To Mr. Gow Visiting Dumfries. So Gow must have made that trip.
Made it. And can I just say to you, Pete, that I'm sitting here looking out a window to my right here, and this and the village of Amesfield was on the old main road north out of Dumfries. This bypass now, but this is it literally outside my window.
So he would have walked past your house.
Oh yeah, my house would have been here then. Yeah, so Burns would have ridden past it. Neil Gow would have. I'll give them a wee wave. There you go, boys. We're still talking about the night you wrecked the village, but anyway, that's. But it's remarkable. It's lovely that.
And you had just moved in then, William, didn't you?
Aye, thanks very much. We had just moved in, yeah.
No, not you. No, Linda's much younger.
Time is marching on, Pete, and this was, a great wee way to mark Burns Night, linking it with the dancing and the music and so on. We're going to finish with a few favourites, and can you start off with Now, you said there was an original tune for My Love Is Like a Red, Red Rose. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Not the song that everybody knows or the
Everyone knows. Everyone knows that one. But Burns chose a Gow tune called Major Graham Winch Breaky, which goes like this. So another simple melody.
Exactly. And of course, I suppose it came to the publisher. We could talk all night about this, but we can't do that. But I mean, Burns knew these melodies. He played the fiddle a bit, so he wrote his words to that. But sometimes the publishers kind of knew better somehow or other, like Auld Lang Syne. I mean, he didn't write Auld Lang Syne or to the song we all sing, but maybe if that was the one they had published, it wouldn't have become the international anthem that it has become because the publisher put it to another tune. But that's a debate for another day. Gary, we're getting there with time now, so we'll need to go on. But have you got a favourite verse? Have you got a favourite verse of
So
Burns?
I find this really difficult to choose because there are so many, aren't there? And thing verses out of A Man's a Man for a' that wonderful poem of humanitarianism and just about brothers being all that. But I think because we're on the Blether, I had to go for a verse from Tam O'Shanter, which of course mentions dance in it. It's and Tam O'Shanter is one of my favourite. I wish I could learn it and recite it, but it's so long. Trying to learn it off by heart is difficult. But some really great descriptions in that poem. Warlocks and witches in a dance, nae cotillion Brent knew fae France, but hornpipes, jigs, strathspeys, and reels, put life and metal in their heels. A winnock bunker in the east, there sat auld Nick in shape a beast, a towsy tyke, black, grim, and large. To gie them music was his charge. He screwed the pipes and gart them skirl, till roof and rafters a' did dirl.
Fantastic, isn't it? I mean, you can just picture the scene. It's
You
fantastic.
can, yeah, it's
You
just
mentioned
wonderful.
a man's a man for all that, and it's Burns' philosophy, isn't it, that has made him the world. I think there are more statues of Robert Burns in the world than anybody else. I
Yeah,
think that's a fact. They're
yeah.
everywhere, and it's
Pete's
that.
working on Neil Gow being overtaken him, so.
You just
Yeah,
got the one, but it's a good one.
yeah, we're looking forward to see that.
What about
No,
yourself, William? Have you got a favourite? Have you got a
yeah,
favourite
yeah. Well,
verse?
again, that philosophy of, and the simplicity of stuff, and it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. We're all Jock Tamson's bairns, as somebody once said. At the end of the day, dust to dust shall you return, and all that sort of stuff. And Burns, in his epistle to Davy, a brother poet, which is a long, 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 long thing. This wonderful verse, which just sums up if we could all be like this in the world, what a great place it would be. It's no in titles nor in rank. It's no in wealth like London Bank to purchase peace and rest. It's no in Mackin muckle mere. It's no in books. It's no in lear to make us truly blessed. If happiness hae not her seat and centre in the breast, we may be wise or rich or great, but never can be blessed. Nae treasures nor pleasures can mak us happy lang. The heart's eye, the pert eye, that maks us recht or wrang. I think that's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Now, our international audience might have a bit of difficulty with some of these today. I
Yeah.
mean, you did already ask in the last episode if we could get subtitles. Now, if you've struggled in the last 9 episodes, you've really struggled tonight. But we'll maybe see if we can find links to the pop links into the poems so you can have a look through. And it would be great, actually, I think, if folk could put their own favourite verses in the comments.
Yep, that would be terrific.
Here. And it would be wonderful just to have a, fire on in with your favourite verses or just your favourite poems of Burns.
And we'll rattle them off to you some night at £5 a piece. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
But no, that's Burns' philosophy of man to man, the world hour shall brothers be for all that. My God, he was saying that in the late 1700s.
Yeah.
And here we are, and the world's just in such turmoil. He was such a humanitarian, terrific. And hopefully that spirit is what the Royal Scottish Country Dance Society is about. Getting together, getting folk throughout the world together. And Pete, you've enjoyed playing at summer school. Do you enjoy playing for the country dancing? You enjoy
I love
being
playing for dancing, yeah. I mean, I love playing in a nice acoustic space, just slow airs and stuff. But playing for a group of dancers, especially I particularly like playing for a group of dancers who are really good at the Strathspey, because the Strathspey really looks fabulous when it's done properly.
obviously seen us, Gary.
Yeah.
Played for us.
I do enjoy playing for dancing very much. Yeah.
Good. And Teresa, of course, dances as we know Teresa very well. So please pass on our best wishes to
I
Teresa.
shall do. I shall do. Sadly, she's still recovering from an injury sustained while dancing. Dancing is dangerous. She was in the middle of a dem, and she went forward, and she heard her calf muscle go. So she's still recovering from that. But fool, she still loves dancing.
Well, give her our very best wishes.
I'll pass on the best wishes. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, look, guys, it's been absolutely terrific. What a
Wonderful.
great way to spend a Burns night. Talking about the music and the dancing and everything, Gary. Hasn't it been terrific?
Oh, absolutely. And to hear Neil Gow's fiddle being played by Pete Clark. I mean, what more could you ask for to spend an evening? It's been brilliant.
So we're going to finish now with that international anthem, Auld Lang Syne. We're not going to sing it. Pete's going to play it later on. And again, maybe Pete, when you take it up, could you play the original tune, first of all, that Robert Burns was listening to and put the poem to, and then finish with
the more familiar recent tune, yeah.
Yeah,
but before that, Gary, we've got an exciting guest coming up next month, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed this one. And I think we're all going to enjoy next month as well, because we have Alan McPherson, who is the RSCDS archivist, joining us in the Blether next month. He'll be talking about the archive and the what goes into maintaining it and collecting stuff for it and looking through it all. I'm sure we might even see some of the things that are in the archive as well, if we're lucky. But that'll be a great one. So if anybody has any questions for Alan or would like to see anything in particular, perhaps, can't promise that he would be able to find it in that time, but please do let us know if you've got any questions or particular items that we'd like to see.
Yeah, RSCDS, info at rscds.org. Info at rscds.org. I mean, we've got everything from Miss Milligan's handbag. So we'll maybe get that along. Shall we get that along? I'll get Alan to bring Miss Milligan's handbag for a start, and we'll take it from there. So there you go. No, that's great. Anyway, Pete, a million thank yous, and we'll see you somewhere in a hall and playing, and keep up that great work. Terrific, and thanks for bringing Neil Gow's fiddle tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That's great. So we'll see you next month with Alan McPherson, but to take us out, here is that famous farewell, but we'll meet again poem throughout the world by Robert Burns. Should auld acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind, should auld acquaintance be forgot and auld lang syne, for auld lang syne, my dear, for auld lang syne, we'll tak a cup o' kindness yet, for auld lang syne.
And surely you'll be your pint stout, and surely I'll be mine, and we'll tak a cup of kindness yet, for auld lang syne.
We twa hae run about the braes, and pooed the gowans fine, but we've wandered mony a weary fit sin auld lang syne.
We twa hae paddled in the burn, frae morning sun till dine, but seas between us braid hae roared, sin auld lang syne.
And there's a hand, my trusty fear, and gie's a hand o' thine, and we'll tak a recht good willie wacht for auld lang syne.
For auld lang syne, my dear, for auld lang syne, we'll tak a cup o' kindness yet, for auld lang syne.